Buying your first home is not easy. There's always challenges.
Right. So that's why time is really important. And we talk about this in the pod, is that you should start the process as soon as you're planning on buying a property.
I relate to Kirsty in a lot of ways because my HECS debt is huge. By the time I finish my master's, I'll have $100,000. Welcome back to Property Now, where we are on a mission to make you the property pro in your group chat. Today, me and the guys are dissecting a trending TikTok video that popped up in the last week that is a first home buyer story and goes through lots of struggles faced along the journey. We hope you enjoy.
Hey, great to have you back, Zaz.
Zaz is back. Woo! Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks.
Guess who's back?
Longer than anticipated.
Back again.
I am back.
Zaz is back.
Tell a friend.
Yeah.
Guess who's back?
Now
Guess
everyone
who's
report
back?
to the dance
Guess who's
floor.
back?
To the dance floor.
Guess who's back?
Yeah.
Jace brings us down a whole octave. That's fantastic.
He does. Although I'm a bit husky at the moment still, so I'm trying to match Jace. Thanks for holding down the fort, guys. It's been a couple of weeks.
Oh, it was hard.
The place looks great.
Why do you keep looking at me like that?
Dealing with
It's
you.
so central.
It's only weird if you make it weird.
So weird it is.
Yeah.
That's true.
Zaz is back.
Return up, Zaz. I'm like, fucking hell, man. I'm leaving.
Yeah. Well, guys, yes, I am back. And as I said, thanks for not burning the place down. You had some great discussions while I was away.
Do you like the new seating arrangement?
Honestly, I hate to be the one. It feels exactly the same.
You know when
Zaz is back.
did you guys ever do it as a kid?
Her memory, like...
Did you ever as a kid like rearrange your room and you change your bed from like that wall to that wall and it felt like a whole different room? Did anyone ever do
It's
that
really
as a kid?
special.
Genuinely feel different for you guys.
It is different because
Is
we used
it?
to
Yeah,
sit... We weren't facing each other. We used to be across from
We
each
are
other.
facing each other more. Yeah, okay, I'll give you that. The feng shui is way better in here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good work, guys.
Man,
Are
the
we not?
prosperity
Are we-
is just, I can feel it.
Is this what you guys have spent the last 2 weeks working on? You've adjusted the chairs
Man.
slightly.
Wow, feel the prosperity.
How is married life, Saz? You've obviously forgotten everything pre-married life. So.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
Wiped the slate clean. Yeah, look, married life is exactly the same, except now I say husband and go, hee hee. That's like the only difference. Look, let's get into it. That's enough shit talk for the morning. This episode is actually based on a TikTok. And I'm going to get it up on the screen and we're going to watch it in a second. But I want to give a little bit of context for people that might not have seen it. Now, when we first saw it, it hadn't yet been picked up by the news cycle. It since has. What are you doing?
I'd like to say we were first to pick up the story.
Yeah, I think that
Fucking focus.
we would have been first if we got to this yesterday.
None of us can focus today. All right.
But it has been picked up by the news cycle since. So a little bit about the context before we jump into watching the video. But basically we have Kirsty McConnell. She is a Queensland-based first home buyer. She's 26 years old. She earns $80K a year, has $60K in HECS. And yeah, she's purchased her first property. I think she's due to move into it or settle on it in a couple of weeks. I'm actually not sure on that bit, but regardless, it's an apartment in Southport, Queensland that she bought for $365K. Now, due to first home buyer, grants, initiatives, all that sort of stuff, she only needed a 5% deposit, and she had $45,000 saved. So she thought she was in a really good spot to be able to afford that deposit and also have a bit of a buffer there. And basically her whole video, and it's quite a long video, but we're going to get through it all, is her kind of ranting about her frustrations with the process because she has been hit with a bunch of challenges along the way, mainly in the way of, hidden fees. So what I want us to do, we're going to watch the video and we're going to, dissect it, respond to the different bits of her story and kind of speculate around as to what we think has occurred. And just, a disclaimer as well, obviously we are going to be, responding to someone's individual story and circumstances, but this is in no way advice for Kirsty or, this is not...
four mates having a convo.
Yeah, exactly. We're just kind of talking about it. So yeah, don't take any of this as advice, but maybe take it as, inspo to do some research and
yeah, look, she's put it out there.
continue
I think it's going to be we're going to find out that it's a pretty common issue across the market that Kirsty's issue of, she was told X amount that she needed and it came up to be about 20 or 30% more that she needed.
Hey, spoiler alert.
Let's
get into the
but
story.
it's really interesting to see. So let's get in. And for those that might be listening, You don't need to watch it. You can just listen on.
Yeah,
So-
you'll still hear it. All right, let's get this going.
I'm buying an apartment and I'm meant to be moving in like 2 weeks, and I'm just pissed off. I've been pissed off multiple times through this process because I just feel like nobody can give me a straight answer about anything, specifically around money. Buying an apartment by myself is such a massive thing, and it's so many instances along the way. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm asking all the questions. I'm constantly asking, like, and is this everything? Are there additional fees? Are there other things I should be worried about? And I'm pissed off again today because all of a sudden there's an additional payment that I'm due to make that I didn't know about. Put an offer on this apartment. I called a broker about financing, and he originally, the amount that he said that they could loan me was going to leave me with a $27,000 deposit that I was going to have to put down for this unit. And I was like, great, easy. I had $45,000 saved. So I was like, great, no problem. We talked about it a little bit more. We looked at the place. There was other stuff going on that needed to be factored in. I've got a HECS debt. Ended up being about $38,000, I think is what it came to, was going to be my deposit amount. And I was like, perfect, $38,000 for the deposit.
Can I just quickly stop it there? So I'm going to ask a lot of questions with this one. But she says she originally got told by the mortgage broker, correct, that it was $27,000, and then it jumps up to $38,000 when they factor in a few more things. Does that happen a lot? Like, why would that original amount get quoted if it's not the actual amount?
That's a great question, Zaz.
Thank you.
If only we had a mortgage broker to answer.
Yeah, I'm looking at
A
you,
real
Jace.
mortgage broker. Nah, you're real.
Yeah, so that can happen, but
Yeah.
it shouldn't happen.
Right.
That's the main thing. So the mortgage broker's obviously done a borrowing capacity calculation.
Like on the phone, or
Yeah, on the phone, in person, because when you first go see a mortgage broker, the thing you want to know is how much can I borrow? And if I'm buying a property around this price range, how much do I need to have as a deposit? So the mortgage broker will do a calculation based on your income, your expenses, you got HECS debt, so forth. You can borrow this amount.
Yeah.
So because of that, you'll only need $27K, for example, right, in this scenario. But that just means that she hasn't been pre-approved. That's just the mortgage broker's calculation. Now,
Right.
majority of the time, the mortgage broker should be right, because when the mortgage broker calculates, it's kind of like a quote, right? So someone tells you this is what the numbers are. When you get a pre-approval, it should be the same.
So, Jace, like, it's gone from 27 to 38K, so it's
Yeah.
an 11K difference.
That's right.
What would have caused that sort of difference? Did this mortgage broker not understand that she had a 60K HECS debt or calculate that? Could something like that make such a drastic change?
Absolutely, because the calculation is done by a person.
yeah, but she said she disclosed the HECS.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
when the mortgage broker is doing the calculations, they might have forgotten that she had HECS.
Human
Right?
error.
Jeez.
It does happen. It really shouldn't, because the consequences. Luckily, she's got money, but what if you don't have enough money? Like, you can't just go find 11K out of nowhere.
Yeah, so at this stage, she still had 45, so she's thinking, okay, if it goes from 27 to 38
Correct,
deposit,
correct.
I'm still okay.
Yeah.
And she
I've still
hasn't,
got
she
some
hasn't
left over.
signed anything yet at this stage. Like, she's not locked in yet.
But
correct?
but not yet. But it's
But she's
getting to
about
that.
to be. Yeah.
But
Spoiler
she's
alert
making decisions. She's making decisions based off the information
The
that
advice,
she's got,
yeah.
right? The
Right,
advice
and you
that
can
she's
tell that
received.
she's not even that upset, because she's like, oh, 27K, 38K.
I'm still
perfect.
in the green.
Perfect.
I can still eat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
just shows, because she doesn't realize that this shouldn't happen. For someone who's more experienced, they'd be saying, what the heck?
Yeah.
Like, how can you, if you get this wrong, what else is wrong?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Well, turns out, spoiler alert,
Keep playing.
there's a little bit more wrong.
Back
That's
to it.
the name of it.
And then I'll have a little bit of money left over to, like, eat for after I move in. Like, I'll have money in my bank account still. This is perfect. I move ahead. I sign the contract for this apartment, right? I get a call from my broker. There's an issue. They've actually come back and said that they're not going to be able to loan you as much as they said they were going to be able to. It's now a $49,000 deposit that you need. And I'm like, bro.
Can we freeze the play there? So, again, this is where one big mistake, I believe, for Kirsty is she signed the contract before the broker has gotten her approval from the bank.
Correct. And or look, it could be that the broker did a pre-approval, but there's two types of pre-approvals.
Yeah.
One is a fully assessed pre-approval,
Yeah.
where the bank's credit assessor looks at all the information, verifies everything,
On their computer.
right? Then the other one is when they have a computer,
Whoa.
right? The computer does the pre-approval. No one looks at it.
Long-time listeners are cracking up at home.
It's basically a credit check.
Yep.
And they assess it based on whatever information has been input as part of the loan application.
Right.
Yeah, see, I don't think she's made a mistake.
Yeah.
She's been told it's gone from 27 to 38K. She's signed the contract on the basis of that advice. Yeah, like it gets to being a mistake.
So
but
the broker's
based
made
off
the broker's made a mistake.
based off the information that she's got in hand at the moment, I don't think she's made a mistake.
So
It's going to get unfortunate.
Yeah, so going back to your question, it might be that she's already pre-approved,
Yep.
but the pre-approval was not a fully assessed pre-approval. Or she hasn't been pre-approved. The broker might have said, hey, it's all good. I've done the calculations. In Queensland, there's a finance clause anyway. You spotted the apartment. We don't have to wait because the pre-approval comes through in another couple of days.
Approval tomorrow.
It's all good.
Go for it.
I'm not wrong.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. Do you think, and from her perspective as well, she's probably thinking, okay, I've been saving for a few years for this deposit. I don't want to miss this opportunity. The broker's giving me enough confidence to go, so I'm going to go now.
That's exactly
to
what
avoid
she
missing
says.
this out.
Like she doesn't want to miss out on the opportunity.
Correct. And it's right for her to rely on expert advice.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like when you go see a doctor, the doctor says you're going to be okay. You're not going to go see another 3 doctors and go, am I going to be okay? Because you're trusting the professional and the expert.
Do you think there's a red flag though? We said earlier, so when we paused the first time, we said, hey, it's all of a sudden an extra 11 grand. Should she have gotten, using the doctor metaphor, should she have gotten a second opinion at that point? Or do you think, okay, no worries. Okay, you made a little mistake. Let's continue.
Theoretically, yes.
Yeah.
But practically, it's kind of hard, right? Because you've already invested in this process. You don't know anyone else. And you're in the midst of it. You're not now going to think, oh, abandon
Start
this
again.
guy.
And plus, she wants to sign the contract. So, it's starting that whole process again.
Correct. Right. So that's why time is really important. And we talk about this in the pod, is that you should start the process as soon as you're planning on buying a property. So you have that time to get yourself fully pre-approved, go through the experience of the broker, maybe talk to someone else, so forth, so you're not under pressure and you limit your options.
But this was really frustrates me in terms of like the home buying experience. Like she's a first home buyer. On this pod, we always talk about getting ready, go speak to the experts, go speak to your financial advisor or solicitor or mortgage broker. And she's done that. So what's really frustrating for me is that like she's done all the right things. She's asked the questions and then she's still got stuffed over in the process.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it raises a question of, and I think we'll get into this, is how do you find the right expert? How do you make sure you've got the right expert giving you that advice?
So are you blaming the broker at this point?
At this point, I'm definitely blaming the broker because they haven't obviously factored in the HECS, and we've gone from 27K deposit that she needs to 38.
Yep. We're
about to jump again.
49, right?
Let's find out.
Anyway, it was going to be like, 2 more months basically until I was going to be able to settle because there were tenants and I was going to get paid a couple more times. I get paid monthly before we settled. So I was like, I can make it work. I have 45. They need 49 in 2 months' time. I had to pay an initial amount of 35, did that. And then I'm expecting a bill basically for another $14,000. I get the bill today, $18,000. That brings the total amount that I'm going to have to pay to $53,000. Take into consideration, the first estimate was 27. Then it was...
Let's pause it there.
Yeah, so I think she's going to do it herself. But it went from 27 to 38 to 49 and now come completion, 53. So at the even at the 49 point, like she's the first time buyer, credit to her, she's still trying to make it work. Like she's thinking, I've got another 2 months till this thing settles. I'll be able to get that savings from 45 to 49. And then at the end, she gets whacked with another 4K.
Well, and at that point as well, she's fully in, right? She's signed the contract, so she can't front the full deposit.
No, so this is the consequence, right? So she's already put the deposit down.
Yeah.
So if she gets to a point where she can't settle, it's most likely that she could lose that deposit.
Yeah.
Is there any way, you mentioned in Queensland, there might be ways out of a contract?
Yeah.
Is there any way she can get out of the contract?
At this point in the finance clause process.
Yep.
Yeah. So if she can't get a loan, she may still be able to get out of the contract. Yeah, so her contract isn't unconditional yet.
Okay.
And that's something that's in Queensland is more common than anywhere else, I suppose?
Yeah, correct. Is you get typically a 2-week finance clause, whereas, say, in New South Wales, when you go to buy a property, even if it's not auction, the seller doesn't have to give you a cooling off or a finance clause. So in Queensland, they call it a finance clause. So if you can't get finance, you get to get out of it. But in New South Wales, they call it cooling off.
You can waive your cooling off.
Yeah, so you still lose your initial sort of smaller deposit,
Yeah.
but you could pull out. You could change your mind for whatever reason. You don't want to proceed, whether it's finance or not.
But she's put 35K down.
She doesn't want to lose
At the
that,
beginning.
of course.
yeah,
she-
I'm not sure. Yeah, because
She said she's put
so
35K
you
down
still
at the
pay
beginning.
the deposit, right? But if you pull out because of finance, you can get your money back.
Right.
It's so tough at this point too. So she's hearing the journey, right? Okay, I've got 45K saved up. It's going to cost me 27. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it's going to cost me 38.
Still perfect.
I can
Still
it's still perfect. I can do that.
It's literally doubled.
Now it's 49. Okay, that's more than I had
but she's still
originally
trying to
saved.
make it work,
She's
which is
still
great.
chasing. But at that point, you know, the extra hundreds of dollars in hidden fees here and there
They hurt.
make a difference. That's the difference between eating cans of tuna and noodles
Or
for
eating
dinner.
at all.
Or eating at all. So what are some of these hidden fees that would have got it up that extra 4K? Is there other things that people need to be aware of?
Yeah, so I think there's been a couple of mistakes made on the broker side where they haven't disclosed all the fees, but I think there's also been some mistakes made on the conveyancing/solicitor side,
Yeah.
which I think she gets into.
Yeah, she does.
Where there's transfer fees, particularly in Queensland. That could be anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000, just depending on the property. There's mortgage costs as well, and then there's solicitor and conveyancing costs that I think she was saying it's $1,500 that Kirsty's been charged, but it can be up to 2K. So these are additional costs that obviously haven't been disclosed to her from the beginning.
Yeah.
No, normally, are some of these costs usurped by the actual loan amount that you borrow? Like,
Not really. For most loans and from most banks, there aren't really many upfront costs these days. Like things like application fee, establishment fee are all long gone due to the competitive nature between banks.
yeah.
Right.
So there's usually no valuation fee either. So the most you're going to have is a couple of $100 settlement fee once off, some legal fees, from the bank side. Yeah, so like a lot of so I don't know whether you can actually call them hidden fees, right? So it sounds more like it hasn't been disclosed to her and explained to her when these fees are due and what they are and how much they are. And sometimes they can be variable, like what Chris is saying. For example, Queensland has a transfer fee.
Yeah.
Where in New South Wales, that's a set fee.
Yeah.
So it's like $160-something bucks. Doesn't matter what price of the property is. But in Queensland, it varies between the property price. So in addition to stamp duty, like she doesn't need to pay stamp duty, but she still needs to pay that transfer fee. So I think these little things will add up. But that's where I think she's getting informed throughout the process. So they're telling her about it, but it's just not all up front.
And sorry, I was just, with those fees, you said that they weren't explained to her or disclosed. Is that the role of the mortgage broker?
And that's
to
where it gets interesting.
lay those
out
out clearly at the start?
I think it should be because I often talk about that the mortgage broker really sits in the center of this whole project.
Yeah.
So you got the conveyancer, you got other people involved. But at the end of the day, if the finance is not there, if there isn't sufficient amount of money she needs to contribute, that's not there, it doesn't settle. Right, so the mortgage broker does, in my opinion, have a duty, even if they can't calculate those conveyancing fees or this and that, to find out what they are, to put it together, or to talk about it as an estimate to say, hey, Kirsty, if you're buying a property for this price range, you're going to get this loan amount. You're going to need this amount of deposit.
Here's the funds available, and this is what you need to provide.
Correct, and that's what's broken down. You have to take into consideration. You're going to also have to pay your conveyancer fees. I don't know how much your conveyancer is going to charge, who you're going to choose. It could be $1,500
But
to
be aware of it.
$2,500.
Yeah, it will happen.
You also got to pay transfer fees, even though you don't have to pay stamp duty. You have to consider maybe factor in the cost of a strata report. That's about $500 to $700. Factor these things in. This is maybe your worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Do you have that? Great. Then this scenario works for you.
I like the idea of a worst case scenario.
You got to have it.
Yeah.
Is one other underlying issue here as well is she originally was saving to put down a 5% deposit because as a first home buyer you can do that. You can waive LMI, you can get first home buyer grants, all that sort of thing. But did the bank come back and say, hey, we don't think you can actually service a 95% loan, so you need to get to 10%?
Yeah,
Is that what
absolutely.
happened
Because
here?
5% of what, 365,000
365,
is not
yeah.
35 grand.
No.
Right? So that already tells me it's not a 5% deposit.
Yeah, so she's had to now go back and find a 10% deposit. and service the 90% of the loan rather than the 95%.
Correct. That's exactly right.
Yep.
And that's what people need to understand, because there's a lot of commentary or promotion about this 5% first home guarantee from the government. You only need a 5% deposit to buy a property. Yeah. That's assuming you have enough income to borrow or service 95% of the loan of the purchase price.
Yep.
Right?
And that's the problem. So you might be able to have that 5% deposit, but you don't have enough income to service the 95% loan.
Correct.
That's the problem.
Exactly right, because your situation may only get you a loan amount that's equal to 85% of the
So you
loan.
got to keep saving.
So Kirsty's in a position where it's like, okay, do you keep saving, miss out on this one, potentially prices continue to move, or do I try and make it work today?
That's the interesting part, right? Because she's ended up having to put, 53K in with all the costs, which works out to be, between 15 and 20% deposit, or about a 15% deposit all up.
But the mortgage
I wonder if she had have known at the beginning from the broker, hey, you're going to need 53K. She might have said, well, I've got to keep saving. So this could turn out to be the best mistake she's ever made, right?
I think we will get to that.
We will get to that.
But I certainly, all of a sudden, your loan is 90%, not 95%. Maybe better off in the long run because of some initial pain. But let's get to the...
But could I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
When we're talking about deposit, what I often see that I think is quite misleading is when people talk about deposit, they always talk about the deposit, let's say 5% of the purchase price.
Yep.
Right? But they don't talk about your total contribution required. So you'll hear professionals or brokers or solicitors or real estate agents, whoever, saying, you just need a 5% deposit plus costs.
Yeah.
Plus costs.
And I think she's asked the question, what are those bloody costs?
Correct.
And no one's been able to give her a straight answer from the solicitor to the mortgage broker.
That's right. So in my opinion, deposit should be, what is the total contribution out of your bank account? Not just 5% deposit or 20% deposit plus stamp duty. Stamp duty is like 30 grand.
Yeah.
That should be included.
Because the big number's scary, right?
deposit.
It's like even the solicitor probably said, our time costs X, and by the way, there's all blah, 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 blah as well.
That's exactly
and
what happens.
That's not what we...
But for someone that has a specific savings amount and is a first-time buyer that wants to... every $100 makes a difference for their budget and for their decision-making. So it's really important that they get the answers that they need. So that's where I think she's been let down by some of the professional... I'm going to put some bunny ears on that. Professional advice that she's received.
So we're saying bad advice from broker, bad advice from solicitor potentially as well.
Let's get into that.
Okay.
The Property Now podcast is brought to you by the team at Coposit. If you'd like to learn more about Coposit and what we do, then head to coposit.com.au.
38. Then it was 49. Now it's 53. That is not factoring in fees that I have to pay to leave my apartment, my current apartment, additional council fees that I'm going to have to pay after I move in, and, also be able to feed myself after I move in. And I'm like, nowhere, I don't pretend to know what I'm doing. The people that I'm dealing with are experts. I have a broker who deals with the bank for me. I have a solicitor who's doing all of the legal stuff for me. I'm asking them constantly, okay, so this is how much. Is there any other fees that I need to worry about? They're like, no. I spoke to my broker. This is how much out, because then I have to pay them $1,500 for their fees. They tell me that this other fee that I'm going to have to pay for that's probably going to be about $200 to $300. They've billed me $600 for that. And then there's this additional fee that not a single person has mentioned, which is some sort of transfer fee that is $2,000 from the title office. $2,000 for, I guess, to register the title in my name. Why did nobody tell me? That's $2,000 that I don't have. And I'm so lucky that I have a super supportive partner who really is not involved in this. It's not his apartment. He's got no stake in this. But I'm so lucky that I have him and he's willing to help, because I suddenly do not have enough money to buy this apartment that I've signed a contract saying that I'm going to buy, because there's additional fees that nobody fucking told me about. I just realized that my boyfriend's crotch is in the back there. I'm trying to do all of the right things and ask all of the questions and be as prepared as possible, and it feels like every step of the way somebody's turning around and just kicking me and saying, you're an idiot that you thought that you were on top of this. And I feel like an idiot every time something else comes up, because I'm like, I am so in over my head right now is how I feel, like a little kid playing an adult's game, and it's like, well, actually you can't afford this after all. It's just so frustrating. And it's like, yeah, well, maybe I should have gone into it like knowing that I was going to need wiggle room, but I went into it thinking that I was going to have wiggle room. I went into it thinking that the amount that I had to put down was $38,000. That's the amount that I knew about when I signed the contract. $38,000. And I thought, there'll be a little bit extra.
Just on that, like really random comment. Like, we've been through this to the age of 18 years of schooling. She's accumulated a 60k HECS debt, been through uni, and we still don't have the basic knowledge of how to buy a property.
Yeah.
Like, does anyone else see that as a massive issue?
It's a big concern.
In
our
concern. Society?
I was going to say, like, yeah, look, she's asking all the questions, but like, there's got to be an element of maybe there's some extra research, extra questions, other people she could have asked as well.
Well, and I
don't
think
the
she's
education
naive
system
in
is just
this.
failing
And
us, right? Like,
yeah,
at the age of 24, 25,
26.
you've done 20 years of schooling, and we still don't know like the fundamentals of how to buy a property.
So,
like, that's not Kirsty's fault. Like, this is just a failure on the education system, in my opinion. Like,
so is it too complex for a 15 or 16-year-old to know about transfer fees, or is there a simpler way of doing it?
No, I don't think the process is actually complicated at all. I just think it's something that's so important in life is not taught to us.
Yeah.
Like, I just think it's a huge problem. And then you get to this point where you've got a 60k HECS bill, and no one really, and Jace, I'm going to lean on you on this, no one really explains to you when you're starting out your uni degree how much that's going to impact, how accumulating that debt, that HECS debt, is going to impact you in a later
Preaching to the choir.
You're behind the
over
eight
here.
ball.
You're massively behind the eight ball.
Oh, I have. This actually came up recently with my husband. Where because he just assumes like so I'm quick segue, but I relate to Kirsty in a lot of ways because my HECS debt is huge. I don't know if there's no issue saying how much HECS debt you have on the internet, right?
Oh, cool.
No.
By the time I finish my master's, I'll have $100,000. At the moment, I'm over 75, but I've been working full time. I've been paying off my HECS since when did I don't know what the threshold is, but I've been paying off my HECS for a long time, and I'm still over $70,000. And by the time I'm still studying, so by the time I finish my master's, I'll hit 100K.
That doesn't accrue interest or anything like that either, but it wasn't there.
Indexation.
Indexation recently went up by like 7.
It's indexed and pegged to inflation.
So all the inflation we've been talking about recently.
It's never been a problem in the past because inflation's been
between 2
whatever
and 3.
it's been.
Yeah.
And now
but now, when it was at 7%, if you had 100k HECS debt, it'll get indexed and go to $107,000.
Okay, so you may as well be paying interest when you're looking at it like that.
It's really interest.
It's
not
interest.
called interest.
Yeah,
but
what's the difference?
It's interest.
So
really.
so is the advice, because I always hear like, oh, look, there's no interest, so don't worry about paying, just pay your HECS debt down as you can. But is there should from a mortgage broker perspective, should people be trying to pay their HECS down faster, or is it right to just leave it as is?
Yeah, it depends. You're trying to buy a property or you currently have a home loan, and when, right? So back then, like what Chris is saying, because it's benchmark against inflation.
Yeah.
So like say 5-7 years ago, it was 0.6%. So
Yeah.
nobody cared. It was technically free, interest free.
Yeah.
And then it was like 1.2, 1.8, so
like
forth. Nobody
7.
cared. Nobody batted an eyelid. It didn't make a difference. But everybody cares when it's now 7.1%.
Yeah.
So for example, if Zaz had that on the 30th of June of 100K, she'd be paying an extra 7.1K added on the balance of a debt.
Yeah.
Right? So which is probably more than what she's paying down.
All you can do is laugh.
Well, I think the HECS, and this is way off topic, but I think the HECS, it's probably another separate topic that I think we should all talk about, because I think it's, number one, it's very limiting in how your income can grow or where you can invest, and it's very limiting in how you can buy a property. So like, I actually think there's a whole episode in talking about HECS, not only on how the system's failing us in terms of that education side, but on what does having a HECS debt actually mean for you financially when you get to the age of 30 and you have a 100k HECS debt. It's a huge problem.
That's the exact position I'm in, and you think you're doing all the right things. You know, my parents as a kid were like, go to uni. Like, it's the most important thing. Get a job, go to uni, continue your education, like, you know, learn as much as you can about the world. And then I'm here, almost 30, with 100k HECS debt that's going up
every year. The reason why I'd like to talk about this in a topic is because, coming from an employer's point of view, I know you're doing your master's, the degree to me is like one of the least most important. If it's a very technical role, like we've got a team of engineers and whatnot, if it's a very technical role and you need a degree, that's separate.
100%.
But the degree side of things, it's one of the last things that I look at when hiring new team members.
And this is, again, we'll stop this segue in 2 seconds, I promise. But the reason why I pursued that extra education is not really career related at all, which people probably, oh, why the hell are you doing it then? But I love learning.
Yeah.
I really love it, which it's like, well, do some free online courses or something.
I guess it should.
And it's the accomplishment as well to be like, I signed up for this thing and I put the time in and I did it. But now I'm like, well, shit.
It's a shame we're at a stage
change the way I can buy property.
Where education is putting a generation behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
And I know you're going to hear Gen Z say, oh yeah, boomers didn't have to pay for uni. And that's to some degree
but that's true. No, but it is true.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true across the board, but it is true to a
University
degree.
was free, mate. Like,
So-
there's
Let's look in. We'll talk about that during the HECS episode. But
come.
no, for sure. Like,
no, there's a HECS episode.
it's definitely like boomers weren't paying $100,000 in HECS debt. Like, that's for sure. So this generation is behind the 8 ball in so many ways. So you're giving them you're weighing them down already at the start line of their property journey. So it's actually a huge
It's
issue.
a double, and again, this is the HECS episode, but it's a double
We've
whammy
said that
because
so many times.
not
The
only
HECS on your
are
houses.
you
A curse.
studying probably full time and working part time, so you're
Yeah.
behind financially already
Yeah.
because you're not working full time and not earning a full time income. So that's for 4 or 5 years, however long you're studying. But then on the flip side, you then come out of that working part time and having effectively no money during your studying time to then having this 50, 100K bill at the back end as well.
It's
Dang.
tough out there.
Good
All right,
times.
let's finish Kirsty's video, and then we'll wrap up with our final.
The fees, I'll have to break my lease. There'll be some fees for that. So, I've got some wiggle room there. I now have the opposite of wiggle room. I have negative wiggle room. I'm squished. Anyway, I'm pissed off about it today. But fair. Like, I would have to cancel this contract and be out of my deposit money, not all of it, but some of my deposit money, if my wonderful boyfriend wasn't gonna lend me thousands of dollars. It's not even like $500, thousands of dollars. Like, I feel I shouldn't be in this situation. He shouldn't be in this situation. Like, I'm just so... Anyway, that's my rant.
Welcome to home buying, right?
Yeah,
Paige,
there
do you
you
want
go.
to flick us back to the...
Flick it, Paige. That, like,
Thank you, mate.
it's a crazy story. The fact that she had help, like, you got to have a plan B. I think she also spoke, because she recorded some other videos after this, and she's been on a few news articles as well after this.
Yeah.
She spoke about her parents being able to lend her $5,000 as well, which is a good fallback. And look, it's not unusual for this sort of emotion or these sorts of problems. It's not unusual to lean on parents and loved ones to help you get into your first home as well. But she did talk about later on as well, like wanting to feel independent. She didn't want to have to rely on her parents.
Yeah.
Which is...
Well, and she thought that she was ready to go. She, again, in extra info we've read since then, like, she started saving 5 years prior. She had this money put aside. She thought, with the 5% deposit thing, and that she'd have a good buffer. She said she did her research. She asked all the questions. She sought professional, legal and financial advice. Like, tick, 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 tick. It's all the things we say as well, like seek expert advice. And the fact that then you have to kind of go make that call to your parents. I mean, again, it's a great thing that she was able to access that support and help, because a lot of people aren't in that position, and it would have been a different story. But yeah, to kind of make that call, and I can imagine she'd be like, she said it in the video, like, I feel like an idiot.
Well, she's been quoted on a few different news websites, and she's posted it up on her Instagram, I believe, in her stories.
Yeah.
And the last story, she said, I feel really humiliated, or something like that. Or
Yeah.
thanks for humiliating me. I think, you know what, like, there's no humiliation. I think you've got your story out there. This is much more common than you probably think,
100%.
Kirsty. Like, this happens to a lot of people. And in terms of being humiliated, I don't think she should feel like she's humiliated. At the end of the day, yeah, there's been a couple of mistakes on some of the advice that she's received. She's asked the
Could happen
questions.
to anyone.
But I think in the long run, in 9 or 12 months, she's going to look back and think, like, it's a shitty experience, but it's going to be character building for her. And at the end of the day, she's been able to break home ownership. When I first bought my first property, had no idea about additional costs as well. And I think I remember the story about the pool that I had, and they had
I
no
remember
pool
you saying
fence
that.
at the time. And I remember I bought this property. I'm like, man, this is going to be great. And then I got whacked with this. I need to make this pool compliant. It's like, it's an additional cost. Didn't have the funds at the time. Like, but looking back now, obviously 10 years later, that property's been fantastic for me. And I hope Kirsty has that same experience.
Yeah.
Well, there's a big message at the end, right? Because like Kirsty's had a few videos since, and I watched one this morning, which I assume is one of her latest, where she says, I've made my final payment. I'm settling next Thursday and I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Right. And she is pumped by the end. So the message here is like, your first home, buying your first home is not easy. There's always challenges, maybe not as many challenges as, like Kirsty's had some serious challenges, but there's always challenges. There's always mistakes. There's always things I would have done better, et cetera, et cetera. No matter what generation you're from, no matter when you did it, your first home is hard. But like you said, once you're in, you've done it. You're then making the payments. Your lifestyle changes to suit. You know, the mortgage starts to come down slowly. And in time, you look back and go, I'm so glad I did that when I did it.
And she'll know for the next one now.
And she'll know for the next one.
Yeah.
She'll learn. So I just hope that this story doesn't deter potential first home buyers from actually trying.
I don't think it will.
Yeah,
No.
I love that she's actually gone out and spoken about this too and put herself on the line. She's humiliated. She's put herself on the line. But I just hope it's going to help thousands of young Australians to be able
Look, at
to
the
do
end
what
of the
she
day,
did.
the news articles have picked it up. We're talking about it. So
Yeah.
like it's lessons for people to learn, and good on her for getting her story out there to try
Yeah.
and. Yeah, she's probably just ranting initially, but it's actually had a point of education for everyone,
Yeah.
which is fantastic.
And I think it's a good message, Jace. You were speaking about this at the start of the episode, but in terms of like, you know, the potential failings of the mortgage broker that she was working with, and, you know, being able to kind of know or kind of vet, I guess, in a way, like who you are going to work with. If you're someone who is really new to the process, especially, maybe do get a second opinion. You know, maybe don't just go with the first. If something doesn't feel right, or if you're kind of getting, you know, confusing or conflicting information, or things are changing, you don't need to necessarily go with the first person you speak to. And I think you make that point as well of start the process like as early as possible. Because, and this is speculation, but from her video, when she's speaking to that mortgage broker, like she's already found the property she loves.
Yeah.
She's got the money ready. So she seems to be quite far along
Needed
mentally.
I
to
think
do it
that's
the other way
cool.
Like
around.
mentally,
Yeah.
she's ready to go. Versus if you're kind of maybe starting the process earlier, you know, you might not have the deposit saved. You might not have found your apartment. That's okay. Speak to a mortgage broker. Get an understanding of your financial position, your capacity for a loan, well before you've emotionally invested in a property and you're like ready to pull the trigger. Because she's probably going, let's just get it going.
Yeah, I've already found the property.
Absolutely.
We're ready to
I
go.
think
I
that's
don't want to
great.
miss this apartment.
Absolutely.
Start as early as possible.
Yeah, I think it comes
and
down to
protect yourself.
procrastination.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people don't do that and start the conversation ASAP as soon as they have that thought of considering buying is the procrastination. But once they see a property they like on realestate.com.au, the motivation just comes,
Yeah.
right?
They want to
But
move
until
quickly.
so that's why the advice is always,
Be-
if you've got
be
the
ready.
thought, so I always ask my customers, are you looking at the app? Then you need a pre-approval, because they'll tell me, oh, no, look, you know, it's all good. You know, we're probably thinking of
Yeah,
buying
you've
in
said that
6 months'
before.
time.
It's-
No, if you're looking at the app every day on the train,
When it comes along, it comes along.
man,
Get
then
pre-approval.
you're going to stress out, and you're going to stress everybody else out in the process as well, and could lead to mistakes, maybe, right? Not trying to defend anyone, but that's human nature, right?
Yeah, if you're working under pressure, if you have
Yeah.
to move really quickly,
Everyone's the
of
same.
course.
Stop trying to defend all your mortgage broker friends, okay?
No, that,
Like-
it's good. It's
But I
good
guess,
advice.
look, a 365k apartment in Southport in Queensland, there's lots of those, I assume, right? So maybe she could have taken some time as well. But like, who knows, man? It could have been in the right spot, the right building.
Yeah.
The
Her dream
walking
home.
to it could
It's
have
emotional,
been. It could have been.
perhaps,
So you don't know, and when you see it, you want it. You've been told you can get it.
Yeah.
And you go. And good on her for actually like not procrastinating as
She's,
well.
she's getting it done.
yeah.
Yeah.
And she's done it. So go
Congrats.
Kirsty.
Yeah, 100%.
Are there any things like, so speaking to like the advice that she got, are there any red flags or any things we should be looking for when we're appointing a conveyancer or a mortgage broker?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of people get recommendations from people that they know. And sometimes you might not know anyone that's gone through the process. For example, if first home buyer, you're young. But I think a recommendation is usually pretty good. And for you to actually ask about the experience, it's not just, hey, I use the broker, you should go use that broker. Yeah, ask some questions. How was the experience? Why did you use that broker? Did you speak to a few brokers and you then chose to work with that one broker? Or who's a good conveyancer? Has anybody purchased recently, had a great experience with a conveyancer?
Yep.
Yeah, so then you can vet them out, and I think you have a chat with them and to see if that particular person, because a lot of the technical work can be quite similar in terms of what the professionals do, but there's different personalities. You know, I think for first home buyers, you need someone who's a bit more nurturing rather than seeing it as another transaction. It's, just another person buying another property.
What about the simple old check the Google reviews?
100%.
Particularly for mortgage
100%.
brokers?
Yeah.
And you've said in the past too, some mortgage brokers work well with first home buyers. Some work well with certain industry types, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
So maybe it's looking into that sort of thing. You told me some really interesting data last week, Jace, which was that the conversion rate for mortgage brokers is like up to 80% or like 81% or something like that.
Industry average is around 65%.
Oh, it's 65.
Yeah.
Still though, right? Okay, so
Yeah.
65% industry average. So that means everyone that you speak to a mortgage broker, 65% chance that you're going through with that mortgage broker.
Yeah.
So only 35% have spoken to more than one broker in that instance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually a minority of people that are shopping around the mortgage.
Yeah, look, in terms of shopping around, like the mortgage brokers all have pretty much the same banks they work with.
And I'm not suggesting they do.
Right.
Sorry, I'm not suggesting they do.
You know,
but-
and they have the same products and typically the same rates here and thereabouts. Right? But I think what's important in shopping around is finding the person that you kind of vibe with.
Yeah.
Right. So getting a feel, are they on the same sort of level? You don't want to have someone who might be, a bit arrogant or someone who's impatient. Or someone who's not detailed in the process. Because, sometimes you ask the question, and you get that with medical professionals, with all sort of professionals, and you go in, they're using jargon, making all these assumptions like you've been through this process before. You ask the question, you get an answer, you still don't understand what the answer is, but you feel hesitant to ask again. Right? So I think you need to
Not a
find
good
someone that
match.
makes you feel comfortable, right? That they're not judging you, that they're very proactive about it, because you don't know what you don't know. So I think that's even more important than finding the broker with the best rate, for example.
And a lot of people have shat on this broker. We don't know who her broker was, Kirsty's broker. But this person, obviously, there was an issue. They found it out late, but they obviously did find a solution eventually that would
A
work.
solution that went
that's
from
right. That's
27K to 53K.
Yeah.
But sometimes
Yeah,
you
but-
don't know, right? Like that person could be very new to the industry.
Yeah.
That person could have situations happening in their life. Like you sometimes
There's a
never
lot
know,
of-
right? Like
yeah.
it's one side of the story. Not trying to defend my industry colleagues. Same thing for the solicitors or anyone.
I know she might feel a little bit humiliated, but like
It's important.
getting her message out there is really important because I think
Yeah.
it's going to turn into an education point for people.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people that are out there, like Paige and Zaz, looking for property, might see her story. I don't think they're going to get deterred. They just might think, oh, you know what, I might go second check what my mortgage broker has told me or get a second
I'm gonna be like,
opinion
hang
or
on, you forgot transfer
confirm all
fees.
my costs. Exactly.
Bitches.
Kirsty's TikTok might blow up and she'll become a mortgage broker. She'll join the
Man,
TikTok
there's a lot of
mortgage
Maybe that's
broker
her plan the whole
mortgage broker.
time.
or a buyer's
Seriously,
agent or
I've
something.
heard so many stories. I had a bad experience dealing with my mortgage broker,
So
and
I
I
became
realized
one.
I think I can do a much better job. Looked into it and became one.
Mate, the first home buyer specialist, Kirsty.
There's a
There
lot
you
of
go.
them like that.
It's all
100%.
happening.
Well, guys,
There
let's
you go.
let's wrap it there. But I really enjoyed that, and for our regular listeners, this was a pretty different format from what we normally do. We would love to hear if you enjoyed it. So yeah, please let us know in the comments if you like this kind of style of episode, because I reckon we could just keep doing this.
I really like
every
this.
now
Yeah,
and
it
then.
was really cool.
But yeah, and thank you, Kirsty, for sharing your story.
The People's Podcast.
Thanks, guys.
Cool. Thank you.
Welcome back, Zaz.
The Property Now podcast offers opinions on Australian property news for informational and entertainment purposes only, and they are general in nature. It does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. It does not constitute professional advice. Always seek expert guidance before making any property-related decisions.
Thank you.